Good evening, students.
Good evening, sir.
There are only 19 participants so far. How did you receive the message? Through faculty courses or through Learn OUSL? We'll wait for 1 or 2 minutes more. Okay, one has confirmed me that he has got the message through Learn OUSL. That's good. That means if you are in the system, you are getting the message. That's great, right? How many of you have received the book 1 of hydrology, engineering hydrology? Block 1. Did everybody receive it? I have uploaded it to the Learn OUSL. You can download it, right? All the sessions are there, all the 5 sessions. So somebody is asking for block 2. I'll give you the block 2 once we are going to start the block 2 lectures. Good, because as you know, these are sort of summary lectures. We can't comprehensively cover the lectures in this mode, and please try to combine these teachings with the blocks notes and try to understand what we are doing. I think it's like 30-70%. We can only do 30%. You have to cover 70% of the work required to pass the subject, something like that. Let's see the number of arguments now. 21 is there. Okay. Okay, then it is 7-9. Shall we start? Right. Do you see the screen? Can you see the presentation?
Yes, sir.
Great. Right. So we are going to talk about the session 4 in this day school today. Now, actually, in your subject, these sessions or lessons 4 to 7 are the major ones. Actually, in those lessons, we are going to cover all the significant fundamentals of hydrology. So you need to pay a little bit more attention to these lessons. I don't mean that you don't need to pay attention to other lessons. You need to pay attention to other lessons, but the core of hydrology is going to be covered under these 4 lessons, right? And let's say this session is going to talk about the rainfall and the estimation of catchment rainfall, losses and effective rainfalls, things like that. Now, if you look at the image at the bottom left in your screen, now this is, I think most of you are familiar with, this is the hydrological cycle, right? In this hydrological cycle, you can see that there is a yellow color box. And in this session, we are going to concentrate on this segment of hydrological cycle, which is the precipitation that we receive on the land and its losses, and ultimately what is going to be effective out of this rainfall. Now, this picture shows, I'm quite sure you have studied these things in grade 6-7. This is a rain gauge. This is the standard method of measuring rainfall. And now, if you consider a catchment, right? This photo shows a catchment where for a particular perennial stream or a river, as is shown here. Actually, this is part of Kalani. No, it's a foreign reservoir. So for this river, the catchment area is demarcated by this purple color boundary, and inside that catchment you can have many rainfall gauges as much as possible. So with the help of this rainfall, we can predict the amount of runoff that comes out from the catchment. So that is that is the sole aim of this exercise. But in this lesson, we are going to talk about the rainfall and effective rainfall and losses that incur on the precipitation. We'll go to the next. Now, the mean precipitation over an area. Now, as you saw in the previous slide, you can have different levels of precipitation or rainfalls at different locations in the catchment. But in order to determine the rainfall for the entire catchment, there has to be a mean way of doing that. So this slide is discussing about the methods available. To generalize the rainfall received over catchment, the point samplings from rain gauges needed to be averaged over the catchment. Right now, as you can see, this is a point measurement, right? At this particular point, we are measuring the rainfall. So it's a point measurement. So there has to be a means of generalizing the point rainfalls at different points to the entire catchment. So one is the arithmetical mean method. This is a very simple method. We just take the average over the catchment. You can read it out from your book. Then the second one is Thiessen polygon method. The third one is isohydral method. Well, we'll talk about the Thiessen polygon method, as I instructed you to read arithmetical mean method from the book, which is quite simple. I am not going to do descriptive teaching on things that you can read and understand. So in Thiessen polygon method, now let's say this is the catchment, right? Let's say these number points represents the rain gauges 1, 2, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 like. So you can connect these rain gauge stations with straight lines, and you can bisect them with perpendiculars, right? You can see these are perpendicular bisectors of these lines, right? If you take line 1, 3, this DC represents the perpendicular bisector for that line. So similarly, you can develop perpendicular bisectors for all the lines. You can see for each and every line, Now this line is developed for 3, 5. Now this GH line developed for 4, 5. Like that, we can develop perpendicular bisectors for all the elements of these polygons, right? So you can see these bisectors are intersecting each other at various points. Now, for example, this bisector intersect this bisector at G. Like that, you can mark these intersections, and you can also mark the points where these bisectors meets the catchment boundary. You can see here, the point K is at the catchment boundary where this bisector for 2, 6 is crossed, right? Like that. So by creating such polygons, we are going to demarcate the relevant or subjected area for each and every rain gauge. For example, let's say rain gauge 2 here. Let's say rain gauge 1 here. If for rain gauge 1, the subjected area is demarcated by these bisectors intersected at each other at A, B, C, D, right? Now this A, B, C, D represents the subjected area for rain gauge 1. Well, when it comes to edge rain gauges, right? For example, a rain gauge like rain gauge 2, the part of it is being demarcated by the bisectors, then the rest is demarcated by the catchment boundary. For example, for 2, K, A, D, E, and with this curvilinear surface, curvilinear line, it demarcates the subjected area for rain gauge 2. So you can see in this table, for each and every station, the subjected area has been tabulated as A to 6. And there is a particular weight allocated for each station by dividing the subjected area by the total area. Now this capital A represents the total area of the catchment, right? So similarly, you can assign weightages for each and every station. Now, so you can calculate the average rainfall or the mean rainfall for the catchment with this equation. You have to multiply the rainfall at station 1 P1 into A1, then you have to accumulate it and you have to divide it by A1, A2, and you have to add the entire catchment area. You can do the example 4.1 in the book to understand this properly. Now in isohydral method, I'm quite sure you have studied developing contours in your surveying 1. So if you know the readings for various stations, rainfall readings, you can interpolate or extrapolate these rainfall readings and you can develop lines which represent similar rainfalls. Let's say this line, let's say line 6.6. For line 6.6, let's say the rainfall is represented by P6. So along this line, the rainfall, we assume that the rainfall is constant because we derive this line like in contour derivation by interpolation for a certain value. So if you want to calculate the mean rainfall over the catchment, you need to know the areas between these lines. For example, let's say A1 is the area between line 0 and line 1, somewhere here. And A2 is the area between line 1 and 2, like that. So you can multiply the area and you can calculate the average rainfall between these two lines. Let's say P6 and P8 here. The average is P6 plus P8 divided by 2 multiplied by the area between those two isohydrals. And you can adapt it and you can divide it by the total area of the catchment here. So that way you can calculate the mean precipitation with this isohydral method. Now, the next important topic I'm going to talk about is the abstractions from the precipitation. Now, abstractions are the deductions occurred against the rainfall in a catchment. That means if you are getting the rainfall, if something is causing the reduction of that rainfall, so that sort of things are called abstractions. Following are the three main types of abstractions. So there is a small spelling mistake, please correct it. 3, it has to be. Now, evaporation, evapotranspiration, and initial losses. These are the 3 major types of abstractions which are there in reality. Now, when it comes to evaporation, evaporation is the process in which a liquid change to the gaseous state at the free surface below the boiling point through the transfer of heat energy. Now, you know, when something is evaporated, it absorbs energy, and the particles, the motion of particles increase and it becomes vaporized. So that is evaporation. So I'm quite sure you are familiar with that. Consider a body of water in a pond, right? Let's say you consider a body of water in a pond. The net escape of water molecules from the liquid state to the gaseous state constitutes evaporation. So if you have a pond, from the surface, the evaporation will take place. The rate of evaporation is dependent on these factors. These factors are given in your book. The vapor pressure in the atmosphere, if you have high vapor pressure, you will have less evaporation. Then the air and water temperatures effect. Then if there is high winds, it will support the evaporation. Then atmospheric pressure, the quality of water, if it is saline, the evaporation will be different from the soft water, size of the water body. So you can read the details relevant to these factors from your book. Just you can do a reading. Now, when it comes to estimation of evaporation, the amount of water evaporated from the water surface is estimated by the following methods. Now, these are the methods given in your book. Using evaporimeter data. Now, you can see there are 2 types of evaporimeters explained here. US Class A evaporation pan. It's just a pan, standard pan, and there are standard methods of marking it. Then ISI standard evaporation pans are there, which are much more sophisticated and with much more reading. And with this, you can calculate the amount of water which is evaporated, and you can calculate the evaporation per unit area. Then there are empirical evaporation equations, then analytical methods. Now, when it comes to pan evaporation, measurement of evaporation from the pan can be calculated, can be considered as lake evaporation. When it comes to lake evaporation, evaporation in a natural pool under similar climatic conditions is calculated. Now, let's say if you want to calculate the evaporation of a paddy field, but if there is a lake close by with the similar climatic conditions like wind speed, temperature, atmospheric humidity are similar, so you can take lake evaporation, which is taking place at that particular location as lake as the evaporation. Then there is something called pan coefficient. The coefficient introduced to pan evaporation is called pan coefficient. The real evaporation taking place is what is happening in the lake evaporation, not in the pan evaporation. So in order to convert the pan evaporation that you measure out of these pans has to be converted to lake evaporation with the help of this pan coefficient. Please read the note about the reason for introducing pan evaporation. There are some logical reasons given in your book about this pan coefficient. So please take some effort to read it. I think it's under it is in page 48, 49. Please read it carefully. It is very valuable for you to read. So these things are not required to be explained. Then the third method is using empirical evaporation equations. Yeah, there are some empirical equations. Do you know what are empirical equations are? Empirical equations are the equations which are derived with the help of experiments. So we do experiments and we find out correlations between certain factors and we derive equations. Now, for example, this Mayer's formula under 4.3.2 is an experimental equation. Now, EW and EA is not given in your book. So I have given it here clearly. Please take a note of this. It is not in the book, page 49. EW stands for saturated vapor pressure. EA stands for air vapor pressure. Now, when the atmosphere is full of vapor, the pressure created by the vapor is called saturated vapor pressure. But when the atmosphere is not full of vapor, such vapor pressures are called air vapor pressure. So you can read the note from the other variables. Now, these variables are explained in the book. For example, U9 is the velocity, wind velocity about 9 meters above the ground. Like that, those things are explained. If you know these values, you can simply plug those values into this equation and you can calculate the operation. Similarly, the empirical equation is given. You can read it from the book, page 50. Please read these equations because these are not metric equations. These are empirical equations. Then again, there are methods proposed in reducing evaporation losses under section 4.3.3. Please read it because it is just descriptive teaching. I don't need to describe those things. You can simply understand that from the book. There are three categories. You can read it from the book. Now, the next important thing is evapotranspiration. What is transpiration? Transpiration is the process by which water leaves the body of a living plant and reaches the atmosphere as water vapor. Now, let's say you have a plant and you know that there is water evaporated from the plant leaves and plant trunk. So that is called transpiration. So when in hydrological sciences, evaporation and transpiration processes can be considered under one heading as evapotranspiration. Let's say you have an area where there are plants and where there are no plants. So by combining all these effects of evaporation, we call it evapotranspiration because transpiration is taking place from the plants, evaporation is taking place from the ground. So once we combine these two processes, we call it evapotranspiration. Then there is a very important section that's in page 54 to 55. This is about PET and AET field capacity, permanent melting point, available water and other relationships. Please read it, right? Now, these things you can understand by reading because it is clearly explained in the page 54 to 55. Please read it, right? Now, for example, PET stands for potential evaporation, and AET stands for actual evaporation. So you need to understand the difference between them in upcoming notes. Now, when it comes to estimation of evapotranspiration, there are two methods available, the lysimeters and field plots. Now, these lysimeters are very complex equipments. I have put two images here. Now, under these images, we are simulating the actual ground condition with the similar sort of soil, with similar sort of plants, with under similar moisture content, and we measure the reduction of the moisture in this particular piece of mass. By doing that, we can estimate the evapotranspiration. And you can read out the note here, and you can read out the note from the book. Now, this is a lysimeter, right? Then in field plots, in special plots, all the elements of the water budget in a known interval of time are measured and the evapotranspiration determined, right? Now, if you know a particular plot of land where you can measure the precipitation that it receives, irrigation input or the amount of watering or the water supply that you make it on that plant, and the runoffs that are taking place from that land, then the increase in soil storage and groundwater loss, you can calculate evapotranspiration. The groundwater loss due to deep percolation is difficult to measure and can be minimized by keeping the moisture condition of the plot at the field capacity. Now we will be talking about field capacity at a later stage, right? Now, you can keep the soil condition and the field capacity, and you can avoid the groundwater loss. The computation of evapotranspiration. The lack of reliable field data and the difficulties of obtaining reliable evapotranspiration data have given rise to a number of methods to predict potential evapotranspiration. Now, mainly, in order to calculate the evapotranspiration, you need data, field data, right? So it has created certain problems. The lack of data has created certain problems. By using climatological data, you can actually calculate this evapotranspiration, potential evapotranspiration, and potential evapotranspiration is given by this Penman's equation here, where PET, daily potential evapotranspiration in millimeters per day, right? Now, to calculate this, all these parameters are described in your note, and for H and EA, there are some huge equations given in your book, right? You don't need to by heart this, but you need to read it and understand it to face the exam, because this time the exams are going to be open book, right? Especially CAT 1, CAT 2. So I'm not going to test your knowledge on these equations, but if you have to use these equations, I will give you these equations if the books are not provided, or you will have to go through the books if the exam is conducted open book, right? Now, A represents the slope of the saturation vapor pressure versus temperature curve. Now, there is a table in your book, table 4.4. You can use for that to calculate A. Then HN and EA can be calculated according to the climatological parameters in your book. Now, these are the two gigantic equations given in your book. And you can use table 4.9, 4.3, 4.4, and up to 4.6 to calculate these values. You have to read it and you have to understand it, right? Because there's no point of putting all the things in your book into this presentation. Please study the example 4.3 given in your book. I also want to give a small correction on page 58 and 59. Now under 58, the angle phi has been not described. The angle phi is the latitude, right? Please write it down. The latitude, especially the, I think phi has been used. Then in your page 59, the second line says equations numbers. Now those equation numbers has to be 4.9, 4.10 and 4.11. This is line number 2, page number 59, right? Please correct it. Otherwise, you might get confused. Now, there is another way of computing this evapotranspiration, that is by the means of crop evapotranspiration, reference crop evapotranspiration. This is a FAO standard method to calculate the potential evapotranspiration. So practically, mostly we like to use this method because it is simple and accurate. So evapotranspiration with respect to a reference crop, mainly they use a kind of grass as reference crop under standard climatic conditions. If you plant these grass under certain standard conditions given by FAO, then if you estimate the evapotranspiration from those plants and that value is converted to relevant crop using following equation. Let's say you measure it for this standard grass, but you can convert it to paddy, or you can convert it to brinjal, you can convert it to small fingers, whatever the crop that you want to estimate using this equation. Now ET naught values are given in table 4.8. in page 64. Now, if you know the K value for corresponding crop, you can simply convert it to the actual E value. Okay. Then in page 63, please write down the equation for Fahrenheit. Fahrenheit, I'll try to write it in your chat. I have given this equation which is used to convert centigrades into Fahrenheit, right? I think you know this equation from your grade 6, but it is not given in page 63. Please write it down. It is, I have typed it in the chat box. Okay. Then it comes to use of empirical formulas to calculate the evapotranspiration. There are basically two types of empirical formulas given in your note. One is Blaney-Criddle formula and Thorne-White formula. They are simple equations. They are not difficult. Please read and do the example 4.5. It is very simple. There is nothing complicated about these things. Please do it by yourself. Then it comes to this important topic of initial losses. Now, when it comes to initial losses, now, if you remember, at the very beginning of our presentation today, we were talking about abstractions, right? So we have discussed about the evaporation. We were discussing about evapotranspiration. So either evaporation or evapotranspiration we can use. Then the other major type of abstracts are initial losses. So even in this diagram, if you go here, now you can see here, there are some initial losses taking place, right? Now, in the precipitation, reaching the surface of a catchment, the major abstractions is from the infiltration process. Now, when rainfall comes, the major abstraction or the major reduction of rainfall, which caused for runoff, is from infiltration. The water will be infiltrated. However, two other processes, through small in magnitude, operate to reduce the water volume available for runoff and thus act as abstractions. Now, when water is received to a particular catchment, the interception process and the depression storage process taking place. Now, interception process is the process which takes place through plants. Now, when water comes and hit plants, not all the water will come to the ground. Part of it will come to the ground as through fall, and part of it will come through stem flow, where water is flown through or along the stem. But part of it will be trapped by the plant leaves and it will be evaporated from the plant leaves. So these are called interception processes. Canopy interception. Then the depression storage is the other major culprit. Now you can see, if this lake has to receive water over this catchment, when the water is coming over the catchment, if there are some small undulations in the ground, on the ground, some of this water will be trapped on these depressions, right? You can see they are getting trapped on these depressions. So these are called depression storages. So there is a very nice description about these things in your note. Please read the section 4.5 to 4.5.2. Now, this is a major thing I wanted to discuss: infiltration. Infiltration is the flow of water into the ground through the soil surface. Now, when the soil receives water, part of it will get infiltrated through the soil. The distribution of soil moisture within the soil profile during the infiltration process is illustrated in figure 4.9. Now, this is the figure 4.9 in your book, when the water is received, the first top layer will be saturated, fully saturated with water. And you can see the saturation described by this photo here. All the pores are filled with water, and such layer is called saturated zone. Then in transition zone, the saturation get gradually reduced due to gravity. Part of it will go out and transmission zone is created. Now in the wetting zone, when it comes to wetting zone, somewhere here the field capacity has been reached. Now what is field capacity? Now field capacity is the capacity of the soil to retain water. Now you can see when the water is saturated, water will flow through this easily. Now when you allow the water to flow through the pores continuously, at a certain juncture it will stop, and part of it, the water will be retained by soil with its surface tension. So that is called field capacity. But this water is very important for plants. Plants absorb this water which are retained by the soil. But after, when most of this water is absorbed by the plants, there will be small remnants of water attached to the surface of the soil. So that water is called, that at that point, the moisture content, we call it wilting point. Now these two plants represent that, those two conditions. Now this pot is at field capacity and this pot is wilting, right? Now for these zones, please read the note in 70, page 70. Now this is a soil moisture potential curve. So now this axis represents soil moisture, and this axis represent the potential or the energy required to pull this water out. Now you can see when the energy, suction energy, now the suction energy is represented by negative values here. Now when the suction energy increase, the soil moisture decrease continuously. Now at a certain junction, it will come to this point, it is the field capacity. If you reduce it further, it will go further down and it will reach this wilting point region. Now I have taken two YouTube videos. I am going to run it for your knowledge. Please watch. I hope Students, can you see it? Students, can you see the YouTube? Please answer.
No, sir.
No.
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 Okay. No.
No,
Okay.
sir.
I'll share. Right. I'll share that. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to play it. Please
Yes.
listen carefully.
Nu ska jag visa två väldigt användbara. Har vi någon?
Excuse me, sir. Sir, we can't hear, sir.
Can't you hear it? Is there a
Yes, sir,
problem?
we can't hear it.
You can't hear you.
Yes, sir.
I thought you can hear it. Anyway, I will share these two videos links for you in Learn OUSL, right? So you can watch them, right? Don't worry. I'll send you messages in Learn OUSL, right?
Okay.
Right. So, now, it is a very nice video. Please watch both of these videos. I'll send you the links. Now I'll move into next slide. Now, we are going to talk about the infiltration capacity. We were talking about the infiltration. Now, there is something called infiltration capacity of soil. The maximum rate at which a given soil at a given time can absorb water is defined as the infiltration capacity. Let's say the soil is receiving water, the maximum rate it can infiltrate water is called infiltration capacity. Now, this diagram, I have extracted it from your book. That is figure 4.11, right? Now, let's say this represents the soil, right? Now, these arrows represents the infiltration. The water that is received from the sky is trapped and gone through these holes, right? But part of it is retained here, right, in this diagram, because there is elevation difference from the bottom to the outflow. Now, because of this elevation difference, part of it will be retained here. So this can represent the soil moisture capacity, where when soil receives water, part of it will be retained by soil, right? So it will not allow it to drain out from the soil. But if you receive more rainfall or more water, what will happen is that it will not only overflow the tank above, it will also fill the soil moisture storage capacity, and part of it will be drained out from the soil, which is the groundwater flow, right? Now, this is a very nice model, and part of it will be runoff as surface runoff. Now, this is the one that actually we want to calculate with all out of all these exercises, because this is the significant one which is required to do the designs. Now, so there are some very nice inequalities given here. If FP represents the infiltration capacity, FP equals FP, infiltration becomes infiltration capacity if the intensity of this rainfall is greater than FP. But if the intensity is less than FP, F equals I in this case. The infiltration capacity of an area is dependent on a large number of factors. Main ones are these are the main ones: characteristics of the soil, condition of the soil surface, vegetation cover, and current moisture content of soil. Now, here the soil moisture retention will depend on these factors. Now, these factors are explained in your book. Please read it carefully. Okay. Now, when it comes to measurement of infiltration, all these things are very simple ones. These flood type infiltrometers and rainfall simulators, these factors are given in your book, and please read it from your book. It is not that difficult. I mean, these are very simple descriptive things. The real descriptive thing is this indices, phi index and W index. I am planning to do it in conjunction with hydrographs, because I feel like if I do it, this effective rainfall thing here, you might not clearly understand it. So it is better I do it in the next lesson with the session 4 under 5.7. There is something very much important for you, which is called effective rainfall. I will do it with that, this phi index and W index. Otherwise, you might find to understand it if I do it here. So next lesson is a major lesson. It's about hydrographs. I'm planning to do it in few days time. Please attend to that as well. So with that, I'll stop the class for today. If you have any questions, you can ask or you can type.
Excuse me, sir. What is the difference between watershed and the catchment area, sir?
Same thing. Americans call it watershed. British call it catchment.
Another question, sir. Is it we should go through all the empirical equation?
Yeah, you study all those things. Those things are there in your book, so you read it. You try to understand those equations. I think the examples are given is very clear actually, right? Therefore, please go through it and do the examples. I found few printing mistakes in your book. So those printing mistakes, I have just read it out for you. I am going to share this video in my YouTube channel. I think you know my YouTube channel, right? I'll type it. This is the YouTube channel, right? And please, I think some of you have gone through that YouTube channel before. And please go through, and previous videos for hydrology is also there, right? And this video also going to be there, right? So the things, the errors that I have mentioned in your book are in this video. So you can refer those pages and correct them, right?
Thank you, sir.
Then will be the next class, most probably next week. I'll let you know. I will always conduct it afternoon, evening. Is it okay for you? Because I feel like most of you are free in the evenings. I don't know, some of you might be still working. So that's why I'm a little reluctant to do these classes in the morning, especially in the weekdays. Yes?
That's better.
Okay. I know that that's better for working students. I know. So that's why I'm going to share these videos also. Please read the notes. I mean, you can see most of these descriptive things are there. I'm not going to do these descriptive things unless it is not clear for you. I'm going to do the problems and theories for you as much as possible. Especially in the next lesson, there are a lot of theories, a lot of methods. I'm going to do a detailed teaching. I don't know whether I'll have to do 2 classes for the next lesson itself. Okay, then I'll schedule and let you know through Learn OUSL. Most of you are getting the information, and I will share it for the faculty common course as well through Mr. Duke Tibatua. Okay, do you have any more questions? When is the CAT? Still, we also don't know when is the CAT, when they are going to schedule the CAT, but most probably in a 1 month's time, 1.5 months time, we are going to have it online. So maybe I'll give you 1 or 2 examples to show what sort of questions that comes in the paper, right? Those are, I'm planning to give MCQ questions this time, and with open book, right? So you are going to, you can watch, you can read your book while answering the questions, no issue. But remember, you will have to study the book. before coming to the exam. Otherwise, it will be extremely difficult to find answers. And the questions will be rotated for most of you. You will be getting 20 questions. I'll be setting up a question bank. So out of that question bank, questions will be rotated, right? So such system will be implemented for you. Okay. Okay, then if you don't have any more questions, I'll wind up the session. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.